Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies in their diapers, welcome to the Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.
That's me, Tiberius. Today, we're going to talk about some very awesome stuff. We have a video about capturing stickmen, a book about robotic animal smartphones, and we have a totally awesome guest. Today we have the one, the only, the amazing Will Blaine. Will is the author of Wildly Inappropriate Stories for Children book series.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. And today we're going to start off with the video of the week, and this is going to be a stick.
And now it's time for the video game of the week.
Today's video game is Find the Stickman. This game is made by Find the Badges. Because it's on Roblox, you are able to play it on PC, Mac, Xbox, and even your cell phone. And it is free. This is the only game from Find the Badges. Okay, so first off, when you start the game, you appear on a very crude island with a stickman in front of you that says, "Collect me." Yes, I said a stickman. With all the cool graphics you could do with Roblox, someone made a circle, a head with a stick body, and some arms and legs made out of sticks. The graphics department went all out on this one. Well, you walk over to him, and you get an award for getting your first stickman. I can tell that this is another one of the Find the Items game. There are some that are hard to get because you have to climb, jump, and go through an obby to get to it. Just seeing them is not enough. Or even click them. You have to walk up and touch them with your body. I tricked my dad to try and get out. I know he hates these, and he figured me out in like 10 seconds. He wasn't happy, but ran around and collected 8 of them before I got my first 3. The graphics are poor, and the game is just not exciting. I give Find the Markers 4 out of 10 stars because I really did not have fun with the game because there's no replayability once you find all the stickmen. But it could be fun for someone that wants to do a single playthrough. Tiberius.com.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
Wait, you are not Chuck.
My dad can help when people get hurt. He loves to help people.
If you are ever injured at work or in a car accident, you should call my friend Chuck.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
The website again is cwsmithlaw.com.
Offices, Orlando.
Does it actually have that much W's?
And now it's time for the book of the week, Unleashed. This book is written by Amy McClaw. Let me to the back of the book. In fact, Will, would you like to do the honors?
I'd love to. Smartphones are over. Anyone has a Baku, a cute robotic animal that functions as a smartphone, but also makes the perfect companion. Lacey Chu is no exception. Her cat Baku, Jinx, is so much more than just a robot. He is her best friend, too. But when Lacey wakes up in the hospital room with no recollection of how she got there, she knows something is up.
Wow. Well, this is an era book that's worth 11 whole points. It's rated for 5th grade in the first month. So this book is a fictional story about Lacey that was really smart and loved engineering. She has made friends with her Baku, which looks like a cat, and she wakes up in the hospital because of an injury of being shocked into a coma. So when she is awake and discharged, her Baku is missing and replaced with an insect companion instead. It looks like a beetle, and she got to talk to her mom, but she was really acting weird. Her Baku got an update that seems to give the robot more control over what they do. They called it the happiness update. Lacey refused to get the update, and later she reunites with her Baku Jinx while she was at her house with a bunch of friends. They were trying to stop this update that was creating lots of problems. The update was made by an evil guy named Eric Smith, and Jinx is the only Baku that could stop it because Jinx has a back door that can bypass updates. Well, I can't tell you the whole story, but it was amazing, and I strongly suggest this book.
Sounds exciting.
I give Unleashed 11 out of 10 stars because at the end, I was in tears with emotion and really sad that the story was over. And now it's time for our interview of an interesting person. Today's guest is going to be so much fun. Today we have the one, the only, the amazing Will Blaine! Will is the author of Wildly Inappropriate Stories for Children book series. So first off, how are you enjoying being on the show?
I think it's pretty exciting. I love talking to young people.
Nice. So I heard that you write inappropriate stories, and well, I have to find out more. What age level do you write your books for?
All of my books, I write them for parents to read along with their children, unless they're a little bit older. Some of the words are a little bit more difficult for young readers, but they're really appropriate for any age.
Okay. So how did you get started in writing inappropriate stories?
It was just an idea that I had based on how I grew up. I remember all the things that I did when I was young that my parents didn't want me to do, and realized that, frankly, all kids do those things. So that's basically what the premise is for all the books in the Inappropriate Stories for Children series.
Okay, so how inappropriate are we talking? Are we talking fighting and blood and guts? Or are we talking kissing?
No, nothing like that. It's just inappropriate in that they're just things that your parents would not want you to do. So my first book, Blight on the Vast Beach, was about a young child that went to the beach with his parents and then decided that he's going to wander away and do his own thing. The second story I wrote was called Sticky Fingers from Jam. It's about a little boy that wakes up early in the morning and decides to make himself breakfast. He chooses to eat blueberry jam using only his hands. So, of course, that's about the aftermath of that. But, as a child yourself, you've probably done many of those things, made a mess in the kitchen, wandered away from your parents, all those types of things. So it's very relatable to young people, and that's things that we all have done probably as adults.
Mm-hmm. So I was doing some research about you, and I found a story that you did about going pee. I love pee and fart jokes. Are most of these stories from when you were a kid?
Many of them are. Most of them are not necessarily about me that I did personally, but many of them are. The going pee story, there was a lot of relating some of the things that I did when I was young in that story as well.
Well, would you like to read the story if you have the story?
I can look it up here and read it to you if you'd like. Let me give me a couple seconds here. I'll have to pull it up. So this story is called Wee Wally. It goes like this. I've learned something new today, and now that I'm 3, I'm constantly searching for new places to wee. Mom had shown me the toilet. I left some debris, but as we walked down the road, she didn't foresee that I had to go badly a wee emergency. So she told me that I should just go on a tree, which left me to wonder just where can I wee? I weed on the flowers planted in our front yard. I weed on Mom's tires without any regard for all of the trouble she had went through that day to polish and scrub them to a shine while I played. I weed on a tree already, that's true, but from a tree, that is to wee with a view. The branches were wet, all covered from spray. Getting down, I got damp, but that was okay. As I walked past our house while chasing a ball, I had to go badly, so I weed on a wall. I stood drawing patterns using only my stream. I can see it's a talent, or so it would seem. I weed in a bottle that I found by the street. I did it out in the open and far from discreet. I tried to wee on a bird, but had no success. I tried running and weeing. It was such a big mess. I weed on some ants that were running around. I weed on a post that was stuck in the ground. I weed in a puddle, then made one of my own. When I weed on the steps, some splashed on Dad's phone. I weed on Mom's pots with lettuce growing inside, but she couldn't tell, even if she had tried. When I weed on the couch, it sprayed all around. My kitty got frightened and quickly jumped down. As I weed in the closet, I drew little kid art. I made some circles, a square, a flower, and a heart. As I finished my canvas, I heard a great cry. Mom had sat on our couch that was no longer dry. She stood there perplexed. as she felt her backside about the source of the liquid and why it would hide. She looked up at the ceiling, then the walls and the floor, but still couldn't imagine what the water was for. While all this was happening, I walked down the hall. I planned to get a big drink and then play some football. I'm not sure how it happened. Somehow I lost track of my intent to go play and to be quarterback. As I climbed to the counter to get a glass from the shelf, as I filled it with water, I was proud of myself. I was weeing in the sink as Mom walked in the room. She insisted our kitchen was not a bathroom. She told me the toilet is the only place I should wee, and if she didn't, she'd swat me. That's a sure guarantee. The lesson we learn here is even though we are free to wee where we have to, we must always foresee that there are lots of those out there that will not agree. Even though it is doubtful Mom will hold my own view, I know if she had a namer, she'd wee on things too. So when nature comes knocking, discreetly answer the door, in the woods or your toilet, and in a pinch, use the floor.
That's funny. And I know sometimes stories that I remember is different than the way my dad remembers it. Does it matter which story is correct if it's still entertaining?
Not for a story. I think that everybody's going to debate history as far as how things happened. I know I have three younger sisters, and we get into a lot of heated discussions about how I was the oldest, so I think that some of my sisters are a brunt of some of my aggressions and activities. I wasn't intending to hurt them, but typically, if the older brother is a lot stronger and faster, and then the younger sisters. So it was a challenge for sure.
Wow. So does it take a lot of training to be able to be?
It doesn't. I actually, I do have a degree, but I've written all of my life. Even when I was a young person like you, I wrote stories and poems and different things like that. And it's just something I've done the most of my life. Yeah.
So what's the best part about writing inappropriate stories?
I think it's just, for myself, it is being able to recollect all the things that have happened in my life. Just reflecting on the things that have happened. Times that I've peed on things, to times that I've wandered away, to even sometimes that I was bad. My next story that's coming out is called "The Brat with the Bat," which that's just loosely based on my experience. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that most of your stories that you have in a poem format. Was there a reason you wrote poetry instead of chapters?
Yeah, not the ones that I've released so far are in the poem type format, and that's easier. It's easier to remember, and I think it's more engaging with particularly younger children, and it makes it a lot more memorable, and it's fun. Everybody likes rhyming and iteration and things like that. So I try to do that in most of my stories and make it rhyme. I think it's more appealing than the chapter format. Though I have written some that are in the chapter format. I just haven't released them, published them yet.
Well, do you use a lot of pictures in your books to help tell the story to kids? It would be funny to see a kid peeing on a tree, am I right?
Right. So this is a lesson that I learned. I first started publishing books a couple years ago, and I didn't intend to initially make an entire book and all that kind of thing. I was just going to record my audio so that children could listen to it, like when they're going to bed or something like that. Is something that's kind of calming and getting them ready to go somewhere or do something or go to bed or something like that. So, but I found out that you really needed to have a book before you actually read the book. So that's when I started publishing them. So initially I didn't have the first couple stories illustrated. In fact, if you look on my books on Amazon, the first Vlad and the Vast Beach is not illustrated. The cover is not really that fancy or anything like that. The second one I did the cover, and of course the new book that I've released is The Glorious Gizzard of Roz, and it is fully illustrated.
Wow. So where did you come up with the ideas for the stories that you were going to write?
I think it's just stories of myself, or stories of probably my like the story Sticky Fingers from Jam. It was my cousin that was kind of an inspiration for that. So between my cousins and nieces and nephews and all that kind of thing, and friends, there's plenty of stories about families that have had children that do inappropriate things.
So how do you decide which stories are good enough to publish and which get to be written or discarded?
Yeah, I do a lot of revisions typically. With the exception of few. Some stories are very easy to write. The first story that I wrote it in a couple hours. I was on a plane from Croatia to Ireland, and I wrote that entirely on the
That's
plane.
cool.
That plane trip. Yeah, but other ones, there's lots of iterations that they go through and revisions and reworks and just sometimes you just scrap it and it's just not a good story. I just it's not coming together at this time. And of course there's probably 100 stories that I have that are in different stages of process. It's I work on it for a little while and as it gets stuck or just don't feel like it anymore. So that's basically the process. There's not really any one thing that makes it a good or a bad story necessarily. It's just how I feel about it and what I think is good.
So why did you decide children is where you wanted to write your stories for?
I enjoy children. I have one daughter, and of course she's 30 years old. She's not a child anymore. But I really enjoyed raising my daughter, and I like children. I used to be a school teacher, so I had that experience, and I'll probably go back to that eventually once I retire. But I really do. I like going to story times and reading my stories to kids. I like going on podcasts like this one, radio shows, TV shows, and talking to children and influencing them and educating them. That's a very, very important thing. That's the biggest thing that I would like people to get out of my stories is to have the parents read to their children. That's so fundamentally important. I don't think most people understand how important.
Because I mean, it's quality time with their child.
Well, not only that, I have taught high school and have had children. Well, I mean, they're young adults at that point, I suppose, but
True.
they are functionally illiterate. They don't read very well, and you can see that reflected. If you can't read well, it's kind of hard to do math, and it's hard to do science. It's hard to do all these other things for the simple fact that you don't read well, and that's something in our society that's really gone by the wayside. I think people get involved in just watching videos and what's on the internet and in book form, like paper or even ebooks. I don't think many people take the time to sit down and actually read.
Mm-hmm. So what's the hardest part about being an author of inappropriate stories for children?
I don't think there's anything hard about it. I'm not really on a set schedule. I release books when I want, when I write when I want. So this is kind of something that I do on the side. I have another profession, obviously. I think most writers are going to have something that they actually do, and then they are a writer in their other life. And I'm the same way. So there's nothing really hard about it. I don't think. I think it's very enjoyable, and I do that in my relaxing. That's what I do for fun. I don't really watch television or anything like that. So that's what I do. I write and I do my art and things like that for my illustrations for my books.
That's true.
And that's what I do for fun. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So when you have an idea for a story, what is your process to getting it down? Do you use pen and paper or a computer?
I use a combination of both. I like to use Post-it notes. Post-it notes are very handy. So for short, small ideas, I'll use that. And I also have an application on my phone. So I typically will have my phone with me or some type of Post-it note or small piece of paper. So I write those type of ideas. And those are mostly like ideas for storylines.
True.
And of course, there's specific lines that I think about. Like if I was working on a story and I couldn't think of a rhyming
word
pattern or a cadence or something like that for the story, how the syllables break in the lines, I'll if I have an epiphany, I'll sit and write it down. It can be. I typically am not at a computer though when I do this.
Yeah. So when you get stuck on what to write, how to fix the situation and get back to writing?
That is solved by having enough stories to write. So
True.
if you have about 100 stories and you just switch to another storyline, and you're always it helps to be kind of like an ADHD type person. All of my family says that I am. I've never been to a doctor to
confirm.
Say that, but I do have those traits, and I think that helps me to keep a wide area of focus.
Yeah. Well, kids are told that we should read 30 minutes a day by our teachers. As someone who writes the books, why should we read every day?
It's because it's part of your education. If you need to read well, and you can't read well unless you practice. That's like math or anything else. You need to practice, and you get much better at it. That's the same way with reading.
But also, it helps authors like you to earn more money.
Well, you don't make a great deal of money as an author unless you're on Oprah's book club or something like that. So it's not a, a huge windfall of cash.
True. Yeah. But what is that one book that inspired you that you wanted to be a writer?
I really can't think about anything that inspired me as far as a book to write what I write. I typically will read books that are nonfiction. I'll read psychology books, histories, biographies, things like that. So it's nothing. It's very. The things that I enjoy reading are very different than what I write.
Yeah. Well, what's the greatest achievement while working in this field?
I think I don't know about achievements, but I do like doing things like being on your show. Yeah, I think this is a very fun thing to do. I really enjoy talking to children and getting to know them and how they feel about things. So yeah, this is probably one of the most fun things that I do, to be on podcasts and TV and radio and things like that.
Okay. Well, who helped motivate or inspire you the most in following your dreams?
I think my inspiration is probably my daughter. Yeah, she's the one that I really so much enjoyed reading with. We had a story before bed every night, and when she was young. Of course, when she got older, she was doing reading for herself, and she was a very good reader, and I think that's probably the biggest inspiration for doing a lot of my stories, and of course my own recollections and things like that as well. As far as famous people, I really don't know who that would be. Again, I don't watch television or anything like that enough to know who's famous or who's a popular TV or movie or even a television show. I don't even know what's on television right now.
Okay, as you said, so most authors have a day job because, well, they have to make money. Well, do you have a day job? And if so, what is it?
I do. I'm a process engineer. So a process engineer is kind of like an efficiency expert. So I make things safer. I make things higher quality. I make things more ergonomic. I increase productivity. Make things faster for production purposes.
Oh my goodness!
So
that's a great job. Honestly, that is.
Yeah. So I
maybe later, would you be willing to come back on the show and talk about being an engineer?
I would. Yeah. So I don't technically have an engineering degree like a civil engineer or something like that. So this is a different type of engineering. But I would love to talk to you guys about that.
Sweet. So what is the craziest situation that you have run into while working as a writer of inappropriate stories?
Crazy situation. I can't say that there's very many crazy situations. I live a pretty calm and quiet life. I don't really get into a lot of craziness. Though the craziness in most of my stories has already happened. That's why I write about it. The Brat with the Bat story that I've got coming out. Wee Wally. That's where all the excitement happened. It's already happened. So I just sit down and write about it. It's not too hard.
Mhm. So when you were a kid, what did you want to do when you grew up? Did you always know that you were going to work as a writer of inappropriate stories?
I could remember as a youth wanting to be a firefighter and those typical type things, but I never really thought about being a writer as a job necessarily. Though I did write when I was young, so I don't think that I didn't think of it that way. And frankly, right now, I'm in my mid-50s and I really don't know what I'd want to do with my life secularly. I'm going to be retiring in a few years, and I like my job, but I can't say that it's something that I dreamed about being for all of my life or anything like that.
Mhm. Well, what advice would you give to my listeners if they wanted to grow up and write stories?
I would say just do it. I think that you're never too young to write stories. Some of my most favorite stories are from students or children that are are quite young, even your age. They have enough talent and unique experience and creativity to be able to put together a story. My daughter wrote a story one time. Matter of fact, I've kept it. It was in a small notebook, and it was probably
Wow.
2 or 3 pages. And she's talking about
That's
this
a
young.
long. That's a long story.
Yeah, it was. Well, but the funny thing about it is the creativity part of it. So she's talking
Yeah.
about this young couple, this boy and girl, and they get to liking each other, and then she goes about how the boy got the little girl a candy ring out of a candy machine, and then as they got older, she got a nicer ring and all this kind of thing. At the end of the story, I'm reading in this, I'm really kind of engrossed in it. I'm a couple pages in, and it ends with the line, and then a giant dinosaur jumped out of the woods and devoured both of them. The end. It's hilarious. But
That is
just it's something
funny.
that was unexpected, very creative, and she thought it was the funniest thing because she got her dad to read it, and
Yeah.
got engrossed in the story, and
And
then
got a laugh out of it.
it was funny. It was funny, and that's really what you should do with writing. If it's you're looking for something like inappropriate stories for children, it's meant to laugh. It's meant to reflect on your fun life experiences, and everybody can do that. Everybody has that experience.
Mhm. Well, what is the best reason for a kid to want to grow up and be a writer?
I think it's a good outlet. I think it's a good place to express your ideas. And also, writing is one of the few things that you can do that's going to be historical. It's once something is written down, it is there almost permanently. So, in short of somebody destroying the book, that could be many years after you've been deceased, that people can read that.
Mhm. Well, if you could go back 10 years and tell yourself something, what would it be?
I can't know that. I don't know that I've known too much back then that I don't know now. Um, maybe some interesting stock tips or something like that. I don't know. I think that would probably be the only thing that uh, I would tell myself.
Mhm. Well, I wrote a radio show and podcast that talks about God during my Lion Strong segment. How do you include God's message in your work?
Well, I think that it's important that people recognize that there is an Almighty God. I think that's a basic thing, that it's a fundamental thing to humans. I know even if you're an atheist or agnostic, I think when push comes to shove, it's pretty obvious that things were created. I mean, things just didn't happen. If you go back to I don't know if I'm getting too philosophical here, but if you go back to the chicken and egg question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's obvious. If you go back in time, obviously the chicken had to come first. That is,
Yeah.
everything that we see had a beginning. So it makes sense logically that something had to always exist.
Yes, but the egg had to make the chicken, but the chicken had to make the egg. Yeah,
But something had to exist first, right?
true. Well,
So,
I mean, God could have made an egg, made a
well, possibly.
chicken,
Well, but
made an
that's
egg,
the
chicken,
point. That's the
egg,
point,
chicken,
though, isn't
egg.
it?
Yeah.
Is you have to realize that something has always been in existence, and most people would call that God. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, what was the first job that you ever had?
I was raised on a 120-acre farm, so um, I think probably the first thing that I got paid for was baling hay. Um, that
Good
was
job.
Well, it's a very hot, very labor-intensive, heavy job. Most people don't even know what that is anymore, I
Oh,
suppose. But
yeah.
it's basically you're going through the fields. You cut this tall grass, and you have a machine that compacts it into bales that are probably 70 or 80 pounds, and then they stack them on large wagons. That's how it was done back in my day. Most people don't do that anymore. They use round
Yeah.
bales or some type of automated process.
They
But
use automation.
Yeah,
They
so
use water.
they didn't do that back in my day.
Yeah.
They did it the old-fashioned way.
Mhm. Well, was there anything you learned from that job that helped you to be a better writer for children?
I think that it taught you to be able to work hard. You know, things don't always come easy. My first story came easy. My second story didn't. You know, so I think it's a good lesson for life.
Yeah.
You will probably, you've had some easy opportunities that have come by you, and at some point in your life, you'll probably have a difficult time. And being able to work hard and to get those other opportunities is a very good skill. It's easy to give up, particularly when you're having a lot of headwind and difficulty in life. It's easier just to say, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do it. So,
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any new books that you are working on?
I do. I'm currently working on a couple projects. The first one that I'm working on, which will probably be released next, is called Will Blaine's Big Book of Geometric Coloring Pages. So it's a coloring book. So I've been working on my art and things like that, and I'm going to release it. I've got about 90 pages done so far, and I'm going to get to 100 pages before I release it. So it's something that has become more and more popular. I think it's more therapeutic for adults and even children, is coloring. Whether it's in a PDF, you get a PDF and you can draw it on some type of app, or you can print an 8.5 and 11 page off and do your own coloring sheet. But I was going to make those into an actual book and release that as well. And then, of course, my next book is going to be The Brat with the Bat. That is going to be a very, very exciting book, and it's going to be another in the series, The Wildly Inappropriate Stories for Children.
Yes. Well, where do you get the names of the characters in your books? Will there be a Tiberius character in the future?
There might be. You're kind of an inspirational young person. I think that's very, very much within the realm of possibility. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if you could meet and get any one person in the world to read your books, who would it be?
I hadn't really thought about that very much. I think I like the children to read with their parents. That's the biggest thing that I want to emphasize over somebody that's popular. I think that's most effective when parents will actually take the time, sit down with their kids, and read a good story. That's fun. It builds that relationship. It teaches reading skills that children need in order to be successful in life, and that parental influence of being able to read and to instill that in their children is something that can't be overstated.
Mhm. Well, what was the biggest mistake you ever made, and how did it change you as a person?
So you made so many mistakes, it's hard to single out one. It's probably not necessarily a mistake, but it's a difficult thing. Like changing jobs is a big thing. That is a lot more impactful in your life than I thought about a lot of times. So I've done a lot of things in my life, and those are probably the most impactful things as far as my ability to be able to write and things like that.
Mhm. So when you're not working as a writer, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I go hiking. Currently, I'm in Southern California. I went to the San Diego Zoo yesterday. That's pretty exciting. It was a lot nicer than I thought. If you ever get the opportunity, I would definitely recommend going to the San Diego Zoo. They have a skyway, and it's like a little cable car that goes the length of the zoo. So it allows you to get a little bit of an oversight of what the zoo's like. And they also have buses that take you on a guided tour. I thought that was pretty nice. So
I remember going on a field trip this year, swimming with manatees, and going to a zoo.
That sounds exciting. So I actually live in Columbus, Ohio. They have a very nice zoo there as well. I like going up there. They have a lot of interesting things there. I love going to the zoos. And we also do hiking. We went up into the mountains that are east of San Diego here the other day, and we did some driving around and looked at some interesting sites and things like that. So that's probably the most of what I do. We do hiking a lot, and like going to zoos and taking pictures of animals and flowers and things like that.
Well, do you play video games? And if you do, what's your favorite one?
I don't play video games. The last time my daughter, when she was younger, had gotten into playing. It was a Mario Kart game on your phone, and I got into playing that because she was playing it. But when she stopped playing it, I stopped playing it too. So I really don't play very many video games.
Wow. So what was your favorite book to read?
Frankly, I like reading a couple books that are in the Bible. It's a little bit old-fashioned maybe, but I like the book of Proverbs. And not to push religion or anything on anybody, but even for practical matters and life, I think it's a very good place for guidance. I also like biographies. There's lots of biographies that I've really enjoyed. I like lots of history books and self-help psychiatry type books. I think it's fascinating to understand why people think and why they do the things that they do, and that's why I read the psychiatry and psychology books. I think it's very fascinating for me.
Okay. Now can you tell me that one story, remember, this is a kid's show, but that one story, that you're not supposed to tell me about. Come on, you can tell me.
I think that was probably the one that I read earlier. That I've been hesitating to publish that book. Well, I've been hesitating to publish that book because I was concerned about the influence that would have on young people like yourself. I think that young people typically have enough ideas on their own without having to have me put ideas in their heads. So I have been hesitating to publish that book. It's been written for a little while, but we'll see. That's probably if I get the more positive feedback and things like that, that'll probably be the book that I publish after the Brat with the Bat.
Mhm. Well, is there anything else you think my listeners should know about you?
No, I don't. I'm a kind of an open book. If you want to look into my life a little bit and see what I'm up to, you can follow me. I have an Instagram and Facebook page. It's Curious Mind of Will on both of those formats. You can see what I'm looking at. I have a lot of. If you wanted to take a look at my coloring pages and things like that, I've been posting those for the last few weeks and doing a little bit of coloring myself just for therapy. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good way to.
Do you have a website for my listeners to want to follow you?
I don't have a website. I just am currently just on Instagram and Facebook, and I probably will go into a few more formats of websites or not websites, but media sites.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the two that I'm primarily on right now. I was doing
Twitter,
Snapchat, and I didn't like it. It was Snapchat it's I don't know. It just seems like kind of pointless because the print disappears after like 8 minutes or 8 seconds. So I never did. I didn't understand that. So I just didn't get into that. So I'm just looking around to see what's there. But eventually I'll get a website up, and I'm just not really in a hurry to do that right now.
Mhm. Well, what is the one question that you think I forgot to ask you?
I think you covered it. You did a really good job. I was really impressed with the variety of questions that you have and the insights that you have. I like that you actually wanted to hear my Wee Wally story. That was another show that I was on a few weeks ago. I read that on that show. I didn't have any idea that it would be as popular amongst young persons like yourself, but I'm glad that you did enjoy it.
Well, thank you, Will. Can you stick around for Math Corners?
I sure can.
Over 40 years, Lighthouse Central Florida has provided education, independent life skills, and job training to thousands of Central Floridians who live with blindness or any degree of vision loss. Whether it's picking out clothes in the morning or just moving around your community and serving Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties, contact Lighthouse Central Florida at 407-898-2483 or visit them online at lighthousecfl.org.
Tiberius' favorite subject, it's Math Corners!
Thank you, Will, for helping me with Math Corners. Today, we're going to talk about polygons. Man, I enjoy geometry. Well, the first thing you have to know is that a polygon is a flat figure that is made up of straight lines and it is enclosed. So it has to be flat, like on a table. Okay?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
it has to be straight lines. And those are the sides. It has to be enclosed, which means all the lines fit end to end to form a figure with no openings. If it has an opening, it's not a polygon.
I think it's interesting that people use polygon, and it's a general term. It's not, even a triangle is technically a polygon.
Yeah. Or a trigon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first polygon everyone learns is a triangle or trigon, which has 3 sides. And then you have the quadrilateral or the tetragon. Then you have the rest, and now the rest, and the gon. So the pentagon, hexagon for 6 sides, heptagon for 7, octagon like a stop sign, nonagon for 9 sides, and a decagon for 10 sides like a star. Yes, I checked.
So I've actually been doing that. As part of my coloring pages, I've done those shapes up, the polygon shapes up until 16 sides. Once it gets past that, you start losing
it's kind of hard.
It looks more like a circle than a polygon.
Mm-hmm. For those advanced kids, you can get hendecagon for 11 and dodecagon for 12 sides. And at this point, it kind of repeats with tridecagon, tetradecagon. It's kind of hard to say, and petradecagon, and so forth. Well,
Yep.
Now a really cool type of polygon is called the regular polygon. These have lines that are all the same length, and it also has all the same angles. I like regular polygons because they look so cool. And if you connect all the corners of a regular polygon, it would look like a perfect circle. So, Will, do you now know all about polygons?
Well, I am always ready to learn. I know quite a bit about it because of the coloring pages that I'm drawing. I've got all the ones up to 16 sides. After that, they start becoming a little more circular, and it's more difficult to differentiate.
Mm-hmm. Well, my teacher said that I would use math every day. Do you use math while working as a writer of inappropriate stories?
I think everybody uses math to some extent. And as far as the geometry thing on my coloring pages, that's the primary focus of a lot of the sheets, are just the polygon. I was kind of surprised in my day job. I'm as a process engineer. You use a lot of math. They're adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing fractions. Mm-hmm. It's something that people quickly forget after they're out of middle school, typically. And
that's true.
We actually use it. So like when cutting metal, I cut metal for some of my job, and I'll put an order in for I want to take this piece of 6-inch metal and I want to make it a piece of 1.5-inch metal. So how much do I take off in order to get that?
4.5 inches.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those get a lot more complicated when you want a 64th of an inch off. What's that going to make it?
Yeah, because that's a lot harder. Especially
so you're subtracting a 2 64ths or 3 64ths of an inch off of 5 inches. And what do you set the machine at? So it's something that you do. I've always heard that too. I thought, well, I'll never use algebra or math or anything like that. And a lot of times you don't. But of course, if you did, I think you'd be a lot better off. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So most people don't understand how to calculate interest. And this is another fundamental problem that I think starts with people not being able to read well, is that by extension, if you can't read well, you can't understand other types of math problems. One of the math problems that people don't understand is interest. So I see a lot of people lining up in lines at check cashing places and payday loans, short-term loan places, where they are paying over 400% interest for a loan. That's short term, and that's crazy. And people don't understand how much money they're paying for that. And I think that's a big problem, because people have developed that attitude. It's like, well, I'll never use math. Well, that's true. You might not use math, but you'll pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Will, for your help with Math Corners. And now it's time for the Heart of a Lion. As you know, we talk about the qualities of living by the Heart of a Lion, which stands for leadership, integrity, obedience, and nobility. This week, we're going to talk about leadership. For me, I think leadership is the act of loving what is good, having self-control, and being disciplined. The qualities of leadership are providing guidance and direction, organization, and being a positive influence on others. So, a few weeks ago, I talked about how my dad offered me a deal to get me to read. I told you all about me reading lots of 150-page books to get a single unrestricted dollar. Now, I thought the leadership was getting me to read more, but when I look at it again, I noticed that he was teaching me how to save and spend money. So, remember, an unrestricted dollar means that I can purchase anything I want with it, even if it's something my dad would normally not allow me to have. Also, if I use it at the dollar store, it would cover the cost of one item, including the tax. So this was forcing me to make tough decisions about what I really wanted. He also would not allow me to spend any unrestricted dollars in front of any of my friends. This was annoying. But this was so that they would not beg their parents for whatever I got, knowing that it was something most parents would not want their kids to have. Well, this was really showing guidance and direction, and he was being a positive influence on others, making sure I did not use them in front of any of my friends, making them feel bad. So, Will, did you see or use leadership at all this week?
I don't know that I have this week, but I typically do. I'm kind of on vacation right this week, so I'm a little bit out of the loop. But I have about 500 guys that work. Now, I'm not technically their boss, but I'm responsible for their safety, for their well-being. So that's pretty much my day job, being a process engineer, just making sure that they are doing the things that are necessary and that they're doing it safely and
Nice.
having making quality products and being able to meet production goals and all this type of thing. So that's very much part of being a leader. And I think it's interesting too that your unrestricted dollars. I think that's a very good concept. When my daughter was about your age, she started getting an allowance, and I told her that she could buy whatever she wanted with those unrestricted dollars. The first thing that I learned when she started getting that allowance is that she's cheap. She did not like spending money at all. So we would go out to the store or whatever, and she would want a toy or something like that. And she would just beg. She would, "Daddy, please get me whatever it was." And I was like, "Well, you have money. You have an allowance now that you get to spend on whatever you want." No, I don't want it. So this went on for many months, until one day she's like, "Daddy, I figured out what I want to spend my money on." And I was like, "Well, I've got to hear this. What is it?" She goes, "I want a sword." And I was like, No, you're not getting a sword. So we had been to a Renaissance festival, and she was really impressed with the swords and the capes and all the fancy things. And she's like, "I want a steel double-edged sword." And I was like, "Absolutely not." And she's like, "Daddy, you told me that I could get anything I wanted with my own money." And she eventually did get the sword. I did make a lot of. I don't typically like.
What'd she do with it?
She really just, it was kind of like a decoration for the most part. She didn't really do anything with it. We went to the Renaissance festivals and things like that when she was younger, and she was really into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's really, people like what they like. So when she moved out when she got a little bit older, and she eventually got rid of it. But she had it for many years.
Wow. Well, of all of the Heart of a Lion virtues, which virtue do you like the most?
I think integrity is important. I think you don't see a lot of that, and you see increasingly less of it as time goes on, it seems. And people are more interested in their self-promotion than for having integrity. I think something can be said for that.
Well, we should always try and be lion strong in everything we do, shouldn't we?
Absolutely.
Mid-State Fire has been providing top-quality fire equipment services for 3 generations to the Central Florida area. Don't wait for an emergency to repair. Call Mid-State Fire today at 407-246-8855. Get your fire extinguishers and emergency lighting for both your home and businesses by visiting www.midstatefire.com. That number again is 407-246-8855.
And that's our show, folks. I want to thank the one, the only, the amazing Will Blaine for being on my show. It has been so much fun talking with you today. I think we learned a lot about what it is like to be a writer in Wildly Inappropriate Stories, and I can't wait to see what you write about next. What is your website again?
Well, I don't have a website, but you can follow me at Curious Mind of Will on Instagram and Facebook. I would really appreciate that. And if you want to check out my books, you can do so. You can look up The Glorious Gizzard of Roz, or you can look under Will Blaine. It's Blaine. You can check that out. And if you would, give me a review. That really helps me out and gets me more publicity. So if you want to see what I'm doing from day to day, I typically will post on Instagram and Facebook at Curious Mind of Will.
And also, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Tiberius Show. And please be sure to visit The Tiberius Show and like and subscribe. Also, be sure to listen to us next week on The Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius!